This is Dear Strategy, episode 105. Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy. We answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators, to another great episode. This is episode 105. We are going to be bringing you a standard strategy question that we got from one of our workshops. So we'll be bringing that to you here shortly. Before we get to that, I just want to do a quick shout out for the company that sponsors this show, the company I work for, the company I founded, Strategy Generation Company. I don't talk a lot about Strategy Generation Company in the beginning of the shows. I usually wait till the end. I don't know if that's a mistake or not, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a little background on the company here. Started the company about 2 years ago. Before that, I was president of a product management training company that I did that for about 6 years, also part owner in that company, and decided to go out on my own about a couple of years ago, maybe just under, and really focus in on this subject of strategy. And the reason I decided to do that, by the way, is because in all the product management training classes that I was delivering, you know, they're great, right? Fantastic. You learn what the role of a product manager is. You learn what a product manager does. And people come out chock full of knowledge. But I found that the classes weren't necessarily moving the needle over the long term as far as changing the way that people were actually doing their jobs. It was teaching them what the job was, but it wasn't really helping them to do that job in a better way, in my opinion. At least not as much as the strategy classes that I was developing at the time, and helped to develop a program for that company, strategy training program. And when we delivered those classes really moved the needle, right? That's where a product manager or marketing manager or anybody in a company for that matter can take what they've learned and really apply it by building a strategy for their business. And now they have a roadmap, right? They have an actual living, breathing roadmap as to what they need to do to succeed. And if they implement and execute on that roadmap, now they can succeed in their businesses. And what I found looking back, 2-3 years after delivering some of these classes, those are the ones that move the needles. Those are the ones that people would come back and say, hey, when we took this class, we didn't have a strategy. Then we put together a strategy based on that class. We executed it, we implemented it, and our company grew X amount, or our business or our product line grew X amount. Real results were something that you could see from that, which is something that's a little bit more difficult to obtain when you're delivering a more generic class, which I think is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying take those off of your schedule, but the strategy classes really, really move the needle. So I hope you'll go out and take a look at what we have to offer. The website is strategygeneration.com. We offer all kinds of classes, both directly in developing a strategy and some of the supporting skills that you need to be a good business strategist, whether those are leadership skills, communication skills, creativity skills, believe it or not. So all of those things are things that we offer as far as, tools and resources and toolkits and videos. And this podcast, it's all part of that company. And you can find more information again at strategygeneration.com. So please go out and visit that, and you'll see more of what we're doing here. Of course, this podcast is a free resource that we want to provide to our clients and prospective clients and anybody who's interested, just so we can spread the word on strategy education. And so that's what we're going to do today by answering today's question, which I'll get to now. And it is, Dear Strategy, which one comes first, market size or product capabilities that match the market? So short and sweet, really important question though. And a short question deserves probably a short answer. And my shortest answer that I can give is, which one comes first? Neither. Neither. No hesitation, resoundingly neither. But let me go ahead and explain what I mean by that. So first, since this question is short, let me go ahead and give a little bit of a background as to what I think this is really asking about. So if you're putting together a strategy, typically you're going to be putting a strategy together to go after a certain market. And when you're evaluating which markets you actually want to go after, there's certain criteria that you would use to make your decision. Market size is one of the most common criteria that you might see. And product capability, my ability to actually provide something into that market, is another one. So I think that's really what's being asked about here. But the reason I say neither is because neither one comes first, is because there's actually a third category of things you have to consider. So let me go ahead and give you what those are. So if I am going to be evaluating a market, right? And this is what a strategy does. Strategy is a product in a market or a service in a market. So typically what you would do is evaluate which markets you want to go after and then decide which products or services you want to provide into that market. And that makes up the baseline of most business strategies, certainly all product strategies as well. And so what you would do when you're sizing up that market is you would consider several different factors. And here are the categories that I would put those factors in. The first category, this comes first, is the market need, right? So you need to make sure that before you start choosing markets to go after, there's actually a need that exists in the market that you can fill, right? And that's what starts everything. That's what drives everything. That's what comes first. Then what you need to be looking at is, and these are kind of equivalent in second place, is a factor of how attractive is the market. And in this case, the size of the market, like what's being asked in this question, is one of those factors that go into how attractive a market is. There are others as well. What kind of a share position do you have? What kind of profitability do you expect that market to be able to produce for your products? So there's other things that play into that. But in general, size is probably one of the biggest factors in this category. But the category is how attractive is the market. And then the third category, which again, I'd put on par with the second one, is what is your ability to supply this market or compete in this market, right? So this has to do with your own capabilities. And again, in this question, they asked about product capabilities that match the market. Again, that's one factor in this category. Other factors also include your ability to compete. So are there a lot of competitors or a few competitors? And if there are competitors in the marketplace, how likely are you to provide a solution that's going to have people choose you over them? So kind of a lot more to it than just the capabilities. But those are the three big buckets. Again, the market needs, the market attractiveness, and then the ability or your ability to compete and supply that market. So when you're thinking about choosing a market, again, the first thing you have to think about is a market need. Now, the reason this question is probably phrased the way it is because, believe it or not, many companies, they kind of forget that first one and they really start with either one of those other two categories. And I'd say the most common one people start with is the size or the attractiveness of the market, right? Like they see a big market, and a common one, I've used this example before on the show, in fact, is Asia, right? I've seen so many companies that say, well, Asia is a big growing market and I want to be there, right? So we use that as the primary factor. We know that Asia is big. We know that Asia is growing. Therefore, we need to have a presence in Asia because we don't have it there today. And so that's it. Go figure out a way to play in Asia. And that's common. It's not necessarily successful, but it's common. And then, if you're a more engineering kind of focused company, a lot of times you start with the product capabilities or your ability to supply something into the marketplace. And these are companies that might say, hey, I want to innovate, right? I want to be innovative. I have a product and I want to figure out a way to make that product better and faster and, more desirable. So we do all kinds of things to the product and then go and try and match that product to a market. Again, important that you can do that. You have to assess your ability to provide a product into a marketplace, but it's not the place you start. The place you start is there a need in the marketplace? Now, it's interesting when I talk to companies about this and, say, hey, this is how you should do it. Almost inevitably, I'll get at least one person who pushes back and says, hey, wait a minute. There are many companies, innovative companies like Apple, for example, who they didn't, identify a market need. They went in and created a need in the marketplace, right? And that's why we have the iPhone and all these other things that we have today. And then they kind of sit back in their chair with a big hump, right? Like they've just won the debate. And that's an opinion. It's a valid opinion. It's not one that I share, though, to be honest with you, because I don't believe that Apple created a need for anything. They identified a need. They identified needs that other people didn't identify or didn't think that they could supply a product to. They really challenged their own capabilities to be able to supply needs that nobody thought could be met, but they didn't create a need. A lot of times people will bring up the example of the iPhone, right? Well, the iPhone created a need where one didn't exist. No, it didn't. I'm sorry, it didn't. Those needs were there for a long, long time. In fact, futurists had been thinking about those needs and identifying those needs very openly for 50 years. I mean, I remember going to Epcot Center. I'm a big Disney fan. I love Disney World, right? And I went to Epcot Center in the early 80s, just when it was open. The first year it was open, in fact, I went. And there was a ride there called Horizons, right? I'll never forget it. It's not there anymore, but it was a ride that envisioned the future in various different scenarios, and you can choose your scenarios and things like that. And Disney is full of that today, rides that were created back in the 80s, 70s, even earlier, that envision the future. And what was the vision of the future? Well, all the things that we have today, all the things that Apple created, in fact, or helped to create, right? Video phones and devices that had all kinds of information and access to information, devices that did things that were only able to be done manually back then. These were all things that had been envisioned long, long ago. I remember watching Get Smart, right? Maybe I'm aging myself, but what was that, in the late 60s, early 70s, a sitcom where the guy had all kinds of cool devices and things like that. And, he used his phone or the shoe as a phone, and, had a special watch that did all kinds of, look back at that show. All those things are being supplied today. So those needs were identified. It's not that Apple created them or anybody created them. They were out there. Somebody just supplied to them. So don't lean back and think that, oh no, I'm going to create a need that doesn't exist. No, you're going to supply a product to a need that exists, maybe a product that nobody else supplied, but the need is out there. So it always comes down to the same thing. The need comes first, right? And then you're going to look at the attractiveness, which includes the size of the market. And you're going to look at your ability to compete in that market and supply that market, which includes your product capabilities. So the question, again, which of those other two are most important? They're kind of probably equal. The one that really is most important and that comes first is identifying the market need. So hopefully that answer is helpful. Hopefully you can find a way to apply that into your business. If you have a question that you want to be featured on the show, please hit us up at dearstrategy.net. .com also works, so you can go to either one. When you get there, be sure to subscribe, because you'll be able to get emails on when we're releasing new episodes and all kinds of things. But you could also go up into the upper right-hand corner, click on the contact link. That'll take you to a form that allows you to ask a question for the show. You could either ask a question about, strategy terminology and tools and things like that, like we answered today, or you can share a story like we did last week, and, take a listen to episode 104 if you want to know what that's like. Share a story about your experience with a company, and we'll analyze the strategy and see what we can learn from it. So either one of those are great or valid, or maybe you could think of something that we hadn't thought of, a different type of a formatted question. Go ahead and ask it, or just provide us feedback. We always love to hear from our community of strategy creators. So please let us know what you think of the show if you have a chance. While you're doing all of that, don't forget to make time for the plan. We'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caporelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.